song stuck in my head all day. I've been walking around like ground control to Major Tom.
There's a lot worse songs that you could have stuck in your head.
Yeah. Oh, I put my helmet on, protein pills.
Okay,
vitamins.
to be fair, that is a good song.
It is.
I do like
It's a great song. It's been stuck in my head all day. I'm just walking around.
I've had Friday by Rebecca Black stuck in my head intermittently over the last few weeks. I don't know why, because I didn't even hear it. It just randomly came. I think my wife started singing it one day, and it's been destroying me ever since.
Greatest 80s song of all time, Meg, go.
Greatest 80s song of all time.
I can do
Oh,
it
man. I'm trying to
instantly.
think of like what 80s songs, because the problem is I listen to a lot of different kinds of music, so it's hard for me to place like which ones are from the 80s. Because I was actually talking to my friends actually just earlier about like dark wave, because like a lot of 80s music that I really like is like dark wave music. Think Shout.
Oh, yeah. Shout's so good. You got to let it all out,
Yeah.
though.
Let me bring out the list.
It's supposed to be very natural.
Tainted Love is
Tainted
pretty
Love's
good.
good.
But I don't think that one is. Man, it's so hard for me to figure out which ones are from the 80s. The problem is it's before my generation.
Oh, it's easy. It's Use Your Love, the outfield. Your Love, the outfield.
You know what? I'm going to stick
I don't know.
with...
I feel like I would say a
Because he's on
David
a
Bowie
vacation
song.
far
if-
away.
Well, I'm going to stick...
May's taking this way too seriously.
Yeah, I'm going to go with...
Yes, I am.
I'm going to stick with Tears for Fears, and I'm going to go with Head Over Heels.
Oh, that's a good one, too. That's a good one.
That's my favorite.
Welcome to Uber Cube, the place where we discuss all things Cube, 80s music, and apparently we're going to talk...
Something happened and I'm head over heels.
That is a good... Oh,
There you
yeah,
go.
that's an excellent song.
Classic.
And before we get going in the business, because we've got a... let me ask you a little dad joke here. What did the janitor say when they jumped out of the closet?
I don't know.
Supplies! That is exactly what Stu's about to do to us right now.
I am.
You have a supplies episode.
I do.
All right.
It's been a long time coming.
You've been thinking about this.
I've been thinking about it.
You're bushwhacking us right now.
I am.
What even tell us?
It's completely intentional because there's too much preparation sometimes on this show. And I feel like we need to move away from just always having a topic. Sometimes you guys need to think on your feet. I'm keeping your brains working at the red hot full tilt maximum pace that they need for your daily lives. So today we're going to do exactly that.
Well, let me get some formal business out of the way. Uber Cube will be at Raven Fest on March 28th. It's a Saturday for a Cube charity event. There are still tickets available. Raven Forge Games is located in Sanford, North Carolina. I will include in the show notes a link for this really cool Cube event. It's like a weekend type deal they're doing, but we're part of it. It's the first time we've been formally included in it, so it's pretty cool. And one more thing that we have to do that's very formal. Apparently, we're going to get pop quizzed here, so we're going to talk about our drinks real quick. Let's go.
May, what you got?
All right. I made myself some pumpkin vanilla chai.
Okay. So you should do much better at this random episode that Stu's going to toss at us.
Yes. And I have been furnished today by my good friend Anthony. This is straight out of Asheville, North Carolina. Brewed and canned by Burial Beer Company. This is a new one to me. I don't know if I've
Burial
ever...
is kind of a big deal.
Well,
Like,
this
they
is
have
this
a
is
brewery
good.
in Raleigh, but it's kind of they just poured it out. But Burial is like one of the best beers in the country.
Well, first of all, the art on the
yeah.
can is absolutely sensational. This is a Shadow Cloak Pilsner. I love everything about this. What about yourself?
I've got a Torch Pilsner it's a Bohemian Pilsner by Foothills.
Nice.
All right.
Nice.
All right, Stu is the MC for this episode. We do not know what we're about to talk about. My favorite type of episodes.
All right. So, are you guys familiar with fairy tales at all? May, I think you might have a fairy tale sort of vibe going on at times with your wonderful Fey Cube. Anthony, I think you're somewhat familiar with fairy tales, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So today, this is going to be kind of like the Goldilocks and the Three Bears episode. Okay. And what I'm talking about is we're going to talk about particular subjects, and what I want to hear from you is either too much, too little, or just right, okay? Now, the context can be your own cubes and experiences when you've been curating your own cubes, but really I'm looking for experiences that you've seen with other people's cubes, really at the larger events like the CubeCons and our event here in North Carolina, whatever the case may be, okay? I'm going to start out fairly simple, and I'm going to kind of alternate to who goes first with answering this, all right? So, again, bear in mind, it's going to start off simple, get a little bit more complicated as we move on. All right. May, I'm going to come at you with this one first. Too much, too little, or just right. In your cube experiences, go with a simple one, counter magic.
Let Like how much of that I've.
How
So
much
just
of
to
it?
clarify,
Yeah, how much of it is out
you're
there?
asking like my experience across like people's like cubes that I've seen.
Yeah, exactly. So, you play a cube and you look, are they
Too
including
little.
too much counter magic? Is there not enough?
Too little.
Is it just right? Okay, too little right off the bat. All right, give us your explanation. Let's hear why.
So I feel like a lot of people tend to have one negative connotations towards interactive magic. The other part of it is that like it's kind of weird removal in a sense because it kind of sits in your hand. It's not really proactive. It's reactive, which is hard to use in a draft, right? But there's also just a lot of really cool counter spells that are just really cool in Cube. Like one of my favorites for Cube is like Censor, where it's sure it only has a cost of like 1 for your opponent to pay it in order to get around it, but you can just cycle it in order to get through it like later in the game.
Love that.
Like you can use it proactively to search through cards. You can use it reactively to like answer an opponent. Then you can go for more interesting things like Muddle the Mixture, right? Where you can throw in like tutor packages around it. And it's like, yes, you can use it to answer things, but also you could use it to have access to an entire toolbox of things.
And
there are a lot of cool counter spells that just don't get to see play.
I want to. First of all, I wasn't even thinking about transmute, and I will say that almost could be a topic in and of itself because I think transmute is a phenomenal ability. Right, I actually use it quite a lot in some of my constructed decks. But okay, so May is going with too little and not enough interesting counter magic. Anthony, what about you?
Too little. I think
too little. Okay.
I think a lot of the cubes I've played and most of the events, including our friend groups, whatever, it is associated to the negative. Somehow, other people have equated me stopping you from doing what you want as me taking your fun. So the strategic aspect of the game sometimes gets a little bit muddled the mixture with too many creatures and too many widgets, and people do what they want, almost like goldfishing your own little deck, right? And I think more disruption, more interaction should be embraced. I'm not saying saturate it. There is a cost, secondary cost that I see a lot too. It depends on your mana base and how much you can actually hold up. We recently talked about Library of Alexandria and about the ability to actually keep your hand full of cards. Sometimes people are apprehensive to actually keep cards in their hand that may not actually impact the board. There's a lot of reasons why I can go. I just see people streamline their cubes, kind of devaluing the idea of counter magic to a degree, because I'm not going to counter your Savannah Lions-esque type creature and waste I'm looking for that big bombastic.
You're not going to counter the Savannah Lions?
Until I know the meta, until I know that is your threat.
You would counter my Mother of Runes, though, would you not?
I would, in fact.
Bloody right.
Right? I think it's underutilized in cube environments.
Okay. I will say that I agree, and I actually, transmute specifically was not a keyword that I was thinking of when I was percolating my thoughts about this, but I do agree that there's maybe some amount of unexplored space when it comes to, and we've seen like cycling, Chris, with some of his cubes has cycling built in with some of his like cantrips and counterspells, but I feel like there are options.
Oh, I love that one.
Miscalc, exactly, very much a staple in the vintage cube.
Arcane Denial. I know it gives your opponent something, but it's very efficiently costed. It does have a trade-off. It makes the tension real on the decision to counter something. I like these type cards that have, yes, I'm going to counter you. I might do it hyper efficiently, but it either has to be specific to a certain subset of cards, like a negate, or it gives them something for doing it. I like that tension.
I like that. I will say, go ahead, mate.
Not that I want to prolong our conversation about counterspells like super long, but one thing that I particularly like about things like Cycle, Transmute, etc., is that they all kind of fill that modal counterspell niche. And when they kind of exist at all kinds of power levels, like, for example, one of my favorites for like lower power and whatnot is like Supreme Will, or it's just 2 and a blue. You can counterspell unless they pay 3, or you can look at top 4 and grab a card. And cards that allow you to have those options are just really nice. And then when you look at like higher power stuff, like Reverse the Polarity, where it's just like, yes, I can counter your stuff, or my stuff's just unblockable.
Mage, do you think? Let me ask you this: do you think in the scope of modern Magic, where yes, counterspells are very important interactive pieces and can be very powerful, but do you think in the modern Magic, hemisphere, that because there is such a a requirement almost nowadays to be able to develop your board and or sculpt your hand, that maybe there's just again so much more unexplored space when it comes to, and this doesn't obviously have to be limited to just counter magic, but even to other spells as well, where you have this opportunity to again sculpt your hand, cycle, whatever the case may be, in order to get that little bit of added value, because it can be kind of a feels bad and understandable why you don't want to add a counter spell if it's just a dead card in your hand.
I don't think that it's necessarily that we're being pushed out of counter magic. I think just that things are just more interesting and the game gets progressively more, let's say, advanced for the types of game plays that we're trying to do, how many plays per turns we're able to do, and like the more complex things that our creatures are able to do, right? And once we move higher and higher power level, you start to notice like the counter magic that we have available needs to be cheaper. It needs to be free. It needs to be extra in order for it to do like what it needs to do to interact in those environments, because you start looking at the best of the we're doing the cool engine things, right?
Yeah.
And you have to immediately interact with those. So it's not that I think that counterspell is being pushed out per se, as much as I feel like that there is an actual trade-off to when people are choosing a counterspell over something that progresses their board state.
Right. I think fire design is actually probably one of the reasons why. I think it makes counter magic more important because ETB, LTB, everything's a value engine, right?
Yeah.
But we also started doing fire design on our counter magic where we pitch it and get rid of it, or we, draw a new card or cycle it out. That's all fire design, right? I mean, cards did that. I know Miscalc did that before that. I get that, right? But it's become more like it's almost making it so you don't have that tension of keeping this card in your hand in order to deal with that bombastic play. Now you have the option of pitching it, getting something better pretty regularly now. It's almost like normalized. Nobody has that tension anymore.
Okay. Well, okay. These are great points, and I think we can all fairly well agree that maybe there's a lot more explorable space for counter magic. All right, next one. Again, a couple of these we've explored a little bit in other episodes, but I feel like this consolidation is going to be pretty fun. Anthony, this is one that I know you like. We're going to go with Planeswalkers.
Yep.
Too little, too much, or just right?
Too much.
Too much?
Yeah.
I'm not surprised.
I think they need to matter. I think they either need to fit your theme. So I think Super Friends, again, this is probably pre-20 something cube. Super Friends was a real deck, right? Establish some subset of Jace the Mind Sculptor or Big Teferi and win the game off the back of Big Elspeth, etc. And Wrath. Well, that just doesn't... It depends on the cube. I'm just saying, like, let's go with a modern vintage cube or something like that. You don't see that as a particular archetype anymore. Now, you can take something like Bones's, I think it's the War of the Spark cube or whatever he has, where it's 100% Planeswalkers. It's embraced the theme of it. That's different. It's made Planeswalkers v. Planeswalkers actually kind of interesting, but I think I won't include that idea. I think that sometimes people lean on Planeswalkers as a win con a little bit more than they should sometimes in certain decks, and I think they should be used a little bit more sparingly. Makes them more special.
I would agree. I think they have the capability. They had the capability to take over games back in the day. If you talk about vintage power level, where you look at some of the more utilitarian planeswalkers, right? Jace has kind of fallen down the pecking order, but then you've got, I'm terrible for names, but you've got the Simic one that can grab Time Walk out of your deck or out of your library or out of your graveyard. You're really using it primarily for that function. Liliana of the Veil.
Tameo.
It's a Tameo. It's one of the Tameos.
I don't even run that one for that function.
Well,
it's just not. It's like that type of using a planeswalker is not as interesting. At one point, it was planeswalkers must defend themselves, right? Make a 3/3 beast,
or adapt the board,
or either destroy, remove, tap creature, come alive. These are the pretty standard.
Bit
things.
of hand sculpting,
bit
of fate sealing,
and they get a little too versatile. I mean, we need to bring Tybalt back. Tybalt is the greatest planeswalker
great again
of the multiverse.
All right, May, where are you at with planeswalkers?
All right, so I'm going to first add the caveat that I actually don't like planeswalkers that much. Like, I like some of the characters. I like some of the, like, writing around the characters. I think they're interesting and neat. But the actual, like, card type, they don't do a lot for me. Like, in my opinion, this is where it gets a little divisive. I think in high power, there's too much. Where there's so many planeswalkers that just don't pull their weight anymore. And in the opposite end, where you have planeswalkers that are incredibly stupid, like Minx and Boo, right? Where it's just like, yes, they're either extremely over-centralizing like Minx and Boo, Oko, et cetera, or they come on the board and they just kind of stare at you and they're a little too slow, right? But I actually think in low power, too little. And keep in mind, I'm saying this as somebody who doesn't like planeswalkers. I actually think that in lower power environments, that's where a lot of planeswalkers are actually going to flourish a lot more, because the games just aren't as fast. They just don't have as much pressure, and they can actually act as that win con.
I think you just convinced me. It may be somebody. What is it? The Chandra dominant one, whatever, the red one, the 4-drop one. I've been like on the
think
cusp
of like the Golgari rock
the
decks, like
Fem
from
cube.
forever ago, right?
Oh yeah,
like you don't really get to see those in a lot of like high power environments anymore. But in somebody's like, let's say, garage box cube, they might be able to still run that kind of rock tool set.
Yeah,
right.
Like
where they just kind of have that nice little box of cards to be like, yeah. Where we have like Vraska and we have Grook.
Grook is on fire.
That's what it was.
We don't need no water.
The point was that like you have like good planeswalkers, and then when you have like these kind of nice areas that it's like ramping into those feels good, right? It feels like that you can actually get a permanent onto the board that actually accrues you value because the game's not progressing to the point where it's irrelevant. But maybe that's just my inexperience because I don't play enough high power environments, but that's just my opinion.
Well, look, we're across the powerboard friendly podcast, right? We're not limiting this to just the highest of power. Anthony, I'm going to agree at that low power. I really would like to see more planeswalkers. I think I agree with what May's points are, even though I understand that you're not a planeswalker fan. I do like planeswalkers, and I like to see them. I think they can be interesting.
I would even argue like
I like to see them. I just don't like to play them.
The rarity restricted, like our good friend Samich, right? It's got a peasant cube, but some of these planeswalkers, even though they're mythic rare, are quite in alignment with the idea of being peasant, right? Like, what was the blue one that made the 4/4 elementals, but takes an entire turn? I run her in my Fem cube. The Wanderer, which is, I believe, an uncommon. Some of these cards, even the old Gideons, they're not going to break up a peasant cube. They're actually pretty much, because it's old design, right? And then you've got this fast-forward peasant cube that's very 2026
well, you
modern.
got 15, 20 years of power creep in every other permanent type, as well as planeswalkers, right? So
pretty
surely
sure
they fit somewhere.
Raphael and Donatello could take down the Wanderer pretty easily.
I think the Turtles could take down anybody.
I think they can. They did. Rocksteady and Bebop could not handle. Yep.
So you're going with so Anthony being convinced, I like that, because I know in previous episodes you've said exercise an incredible amount of caution with planeswalkers, but maybe it's just time in your lower power environment, open the books up on some of these older planeswalkers that are going to fit.
I would not have said that had I not designed my Fem cube, which is very peasant in the idea, right? Like it's almost got that peasant design vibes about it, and I'm running Planeswalker like Elspeth Champion. I'm running lower Elspeth. I'm running Liliana the Veil. And they don't stick out like a sore thumb like they would have, like I would have believed they would have, and they don't overtake games. They just create like this neat little river. It's kind of have to deal with it, but they haven't been like this additive distraction to a game. They have not sapped the fun from a game. I have not seen it. The only one was Elspeth Sun's Champion, but it's only because it's a finisher and it costs 6 mana and it wins the game.
You should be winning. You're not even winning the game that turn.
It's a closer.
Yeah, it's incrementally a closer, but at 6 mana, you should be. If you're casting that and it's landing, and you're even taking a couple of turns to get tokens out and whatever, you should be winning the game.
My point is that they feel safe. I have tested it in an environment that's not max power, and it feels quite cozy to have Planeswalkers in there.
I love it. Add your Planeswalkers. All right, next up, May. We're going to go with mass land destruction / denial. So destruction obviously destroys lands. Denial, we're going to go with things like Blood Moon and back to basics kind of effects, maybe even some singular removal effects. It's definitely a bit of a sore point across the player base. A lot of people are not fans of mass land and mass resource denial. Similarly, that people aren't big fans of mass creature denial. But I want to see where you land on the mass. We could even just call it mass resource denial if that makes sense.
I'm going to hit the hot take. I think it's just right. I think that there's a lot of cubes that can really take advantage of the fact that it's land destruction, and like, especially in high power environments where you're trying to like loop the land destruction, strip mining, whatever. Even nowadays, is that even correct me if I'm wrong, is that even like super relevant nowadays? Is
No.
like lane control like relevant in higher power anymore?
I want it to be
Right.
so bad.
Right. But like my point is that like usually the cubes that I played with that feature land destruction really feature land destruction, and that's a feature of the cube. And it's not a bug, it's a feature there. And it's an important part of their identity. And I feel like that when you are going in with that mindset of we are attacking each other's lands, that is the kind of point of this environment, then it adds this kind of nice tension to the game in a way that you don't get with other environments. And I think that in that way, it's just right. The cubes that want it play it, and the cubes that don't really want that experience tend to avoid it. And as much as I think that a lot of that mentality bleeds over from Commander, I think that in the cube community in particular, it has a home in a lot of various places. So
Maybe it's the only home.
I think it's too little, but I think it's too late. And what I mean by that is I love Sinkhole. I love Stone Rain.
Pucks.
I love Stacks.
Yes.
I'm not going to sit here and say it's fun, but it used to be a fun strategy to try to beat or navigate, and people might not agree with that, but it was something you could do. The advent of manlands, suddenly you do need these sinkholes, you do need these wastelands, and you're right, the loops are not... I want to see like a Ramunap loop or a Ren and 6 loop with a wasteland or a strip mine, but that type of play in a higher vintage environment now is just entirely too slow. It just exists there as an incidental. You might do it twice maybe, but if you're wasting your resources to try to take out Stu's resources, then I'm also putting myself not necessarily a net positive either. Maybe I do have some held in my hand, and the two cards that have fallen out of favor for me, and they still cling on only because the art is beautiful, and they are now probably going to both go to the Black Parade, is Ravages of War and Armageddon. This old way of playing where you would establish this fast little Savannah Lions type battlefield and then just obliterate any chance for control.
Mono white staple strategy from back in the day.
Remove any way for anybody else to get on their feet, and I'm just going to overtake you with my 3-2-1s for one. Maybe if I can do that, right? Or I can just value out with my 1 or 2, or wildfires or any of these type things. And I would have been a proponent of Wildfire. I've moved them all to the Black Parade because, as I've seen in this 2026 era of Magic, me taking the time off to blow up all the lands just is taking too damn long. I need a wasteland. I need a strip mine. I don't even sometimes know if I need to loop it in order to get value. And this is all about the speed of the cube. I'm sure there are certain cubes out there that very much exist where wasteland, strip mine locks still exist. That is actually a miserable way of playing. Back to what May said, the negative connotation associated with you would destroy my resources. I don't know if that's a Commander thing or that's something that, the Elder Highlander Dragon, whatever it was, came over and brought that with them, the anger of the gods whenever they came back over, and everybody had at the time been stone raining all their lands, and they ultimately decided, I don't want stone raining my lands to happen anymore in Commander, but it's just happened now. And then the second point, and then I'm going to shut up, it just slows the game down. We do want these games to complete, go to finish if we don't have all the time in the world. I don't want my one match against Stu to last an hour and a half because I blew up the lands and I don't have a way out. That's it. Too little, too late.
I think
Listen,
that's a fair argument.
It is a fair argument, and I will say that it shows my complete hypocrisy because I will be the first one, if we do end up playing a game of Commander from time to time, to start complaining when the game's going longer than 30 minutes, being like, okay, I'm ready to play another deck or go get a slice of pizza or whatever, and yet I do have a mass land destruction deck that it has a few. It's all of incidental mass land destruction.
You're only doing that too because Stu collects their tears. His mat has a little drain that pulls over into his little tear vial.
I do. Yeah. It's getting very full as well. It needs full. It's how I get. It's how I
You
run
need
my
a little bit of
back
salt in your chocolate mocha macchiato.
He's getting his electrolytes from other people.
All right, so I would agree. I'd like to see more. I'd like to see more land removal. Period. But I think mass land removal. Let's keep the doors open. I think there's more to it. All right, next up, permanent types without enough removal. Anthony, I'm looking at you. So we actually talked very briefly about this on a recent episode, and just the discussion about enchantments came up, and we were discussing a couple of enchantments and how they might fit here, how they might fit there. It's not a common removal type, right? You do have spells like your Vindicate types that can destroy anything, and sure, you've got your Oxidizes and Unravel the Ethers and Nature's Claims that can deal with artifacts and enchantments, but specifically enchantments I want to talk about. But what about just permanence in general and the ability to just bling, I'm removing that?
Too much. I think that we have to allow games to develop. You got to be really particular with putting a piece of removal in the case of that's going against the entire grain of your cube. So I got my artifact cube, and Christian has his enchantment cube, Ben's enchantment. And I think he runs, what is it, Deicide or whatever? That's like a really great like removal for an enchantment, I think it is, or an enchantment creature, something like that. It's not a card I'm overly familiar with. Kind of the perfect little thing here. But it was, if you recall back in his Bance enchantment cube, he did this like Voltron stack of aura on top of like a boggle. If he couldn't get hexproof on it, all you had to do was kick the chair legs out from underneath the boggle, and all the auras topple down, and it makes for a weird, miserable game of Magic.
He's since changed the cube.
You have to frame your removal around what your core goal of your cube is, and that's easier said than done. I am a huge fan of removal that comes at a cost. Like pay 2 life isn't really a cost. Let's be honest. Discarding card isn't really a cost. But I like the ones that say, well, it can only get a creature that's less than 3 mana value, or greater than 5 or greater than 4 mana value, or of a certain color, and it doesn't track out your entire cube. I like to keep my removal suite where it doesn't kill, but like much more than 50% of the cube. So Disenchant was a card you talked about. That's actually a premium removal spell in a artifact-centric type environment or enchantment, right?
Of course, absolutely.
I mean, that's kind of a no-brainer. But then don't run Nature's Claim. I run Mangle's Horn, but then don't run the other one you said?
Oxidize,
or mass destroy all artifacts.
Yeah.
So now all you do is hating your cube. Why did you build it to begin with?
May, where you land on this?
See, my immediate reflex was that I was checking the fake cube and like checking to see like, one, what are my main things that we're looking to remove? And then 2, what are like the big like removal options? Because usually when I think of like the obscure types like enchantments, I usually think of the obscure removal that comes with it. Your disenchants, your naturalizes, et cetera, et cetera. The biggest issue with a lot of those is that they tend to be sideboard cards, is that they tend to not be good enough cards on their own to really end up in the main board. And this is just a personal thing. I always feel a little gross having to pick like a sideboard card. Like I kind of just hope that they come back to me because they're in my color. But I get that there's a certain degree of play and, let's say, forethought that comes with being able to see what's in the environment when you're like drafting and seeing like what targets are good to remove, and then seeing like this specialized removal and being like, is this good enough to main board? However, the problem is that once you have that removal, you have to ask yourself, how likely am I to see the things that I have to remove? So, for example, a lot of artifacts tend to also be creatures. So anything that removes creatures tends to remove them too. Artifact removal tends to be at the point where like it's almost as common as creature removal nowadays. And when you think of like enchantments or planeswalker removal, to be fair, like you can still just like run at planeswalkers. But when you have those obscure types that are hard to remove, like after a certain point, is this card a problem because it has an obscure form of removal, or is it a problem because it's an outlier because of, power? So all of this is a pretext to say, I think too little with an asterisk, because I think that our options need to just be more interesting, because a lot of our interesting options are pretty limited.
Yeah.
And that's just my opinion.
Oh, yeah, I like that. And I will say, Anthony can attest to this. I will talk about my cube. I have a bit of a swing. So, for example, my Diablo cube, I have some higher CMC enchantments and some lower ones. I don't want low CMC answers to the low CMC. I'll talk about the old Millie boy. I know, Anthony, we won't go into card names. I don't want to give you any trauma from the last time we played my Diablo cube. It's a 2-mana enchantment that mills, or 4 mana, or whatever it is.
Curse of the Bloody Tome?
Curse of the Bloody Tome. And I've got...
I don't even know the name of the card in
Curse
your
of
own
the Bloody
cube
Tome.
that you're accusing me of not liking.
Because there's also that, but there's also Chamber of Manipulation. So there's a couple of enchantments in there. Anyway, we're getting beside the point. What I don't want is a card that is very slow. It takes many, many turns for that to be a game-winning piece, and you need other pieces kind of to fit around that theme. What I don't want is for that to be something that only gets to the point of value for including it in a 40-card deck in 5 or 6 turns, but could be a critical part of the deck to just be I don't really want to deal with that, so I'm going to spend 2 mana to remove it. It's too cheap, and the deck itself is too important to the vibe of the cube for me to make it too easy and too trivial to get rid of. The very high mana enchantment, the high mana enchantments, I want them to stick. I want them to be a problem. I want it to be, this is something that's going to end the game. You're probably not going to be able to remove them. There isn't really a whole lot of removal in the cube anyway, but I want that to be similar to some of the high power creatures. I want those to be focal points. I want those to be game enders.
So to make this episode make sense for anybody listening, we are doing a category. What is it? Too much, too little, just right?
Too much, too little,
I said,
just right.
I said there's too much removal. May, you ultimately said, and we did all categories of removal. We didn't even really, we're not going to
specialized removal. Specialized removal.
You said there was.
I'm saying
I said there was too little.
I'm saying there's probably about right.
And we're being very generic in our statements, by the way. We realize we cannot cover everyone's cube. We're going from our personal experiences.
Correct.
And disclaimer, man, are totally winging it, and we're letting Stu run this show. Now you can see why I do show notes. Carry on, Cabler.
All right,
I'm fine with this.
We're gonna move on.
I'm just teasing them now.
You ready for the next one? This is where we're gonna start getting a little bit more wacky. I've treated you guys with kid gloves. Now we're gonna get a bit more interesting. All right. And I'm not pointing this at anybody, so please don't get offended, even though I really hope that you do.
1776.
An obsession with color balancing. Listen, I don't know why, but even someone with a bit of like ADHD, wanting symmetry, all that kind of stuff, there's something just a little unnerving to me when I see a cube and every single one of all 5 colors has exactly the same number of cards, even down to the multicolor cards. Absolutely every single category has got the same amount of cards. I'm like, you cannot be that obsessive about the cube functionality and also be that precise with the colors. I'm calling you a liar. I'm calling you out. May, you're laughing about this because I know this is right up your alley.
I am in this picture and I don't like this. Look. I just like how it looks on Cube Cobra.
Cube Cobra ain't playing your cube, man.
I like my neat little numbers. Leave me be.
I'll go ahead and back her up. And I know you play the cards you want to play. But I also like it so that I can count my cards.
Can you really say you're playing the cards you want to play if you're that obsessed over all the numbers matching? I don't think you can.
I don't make the numbers matching, but I do look at. I've talked about this before.
If it makes you feel any better, Stu, I'm going to be breaking it out of it during the next fake cube update.
Good. I do a theoretical curve. I do that. Like I treat every color as a curve, as if I'm building a deck out of the curve, say mono white. All my cards are kind of lined up, and I have a certain subset of 1-drops and 2-drops and 3-drops, 4-drops, and the saturation starts coming down. I do this on purpose. I watch it all the time. I do follow that little bit of formulaic design. It gives me comfort. It's fine. I don't do chaos. I'm former military. I don't have a gig line anymore because my belly kind of hides it from me. But if anybody knows what a gig line is, dress. I like things to be organized. And I want to look at my cube at a glance, lay it out on my table. I don't want to be dealing with 37 blue cards and 49 green cards. I want them to lay out and have nice symmetry. I know they're all home and I can sleep at night. That's it.
I think the margin of error before it's actually noticeable for the drafter is much larger than we give it credit. However,
great line. I do agree that it tends to be easier for like the curator because it makes it easier for us to like keep track of like how many cards we have of each. But in terms of like actually drafting it, like you're not going to notice the difference between like 2, 3, maybe 4, 5 cards difference. You're just not going to see.
You say that,
right?
But as drafters are passing around like, who shuffled this pack? There's 9 blue cards in here. Well, yeah, because I got 104 blue cards and 9 of these other things. I mean, I get it. I like everything to have some balance. I like to have zen in my cube design.
So it's about the zen rather than the playability.
It makes
is what
it so
you're
I can-
telling us.
It makes it so I'm not stressed out all night whenever I come back from Chris's house, and I can count my cards on the fly, flip them over, and they match.
All right, so you're saying
Granted,
what are you
to
saying?
Be fair,
Too
to
right,
be fair,
too much,
we
too
are
little?
also taking it from the perspective of people who make rather traditional cubes. There are people who make like really creative cubes that are like 3-color cubes in particular, right? Or I've seen cubes like they'll be like a majority one color and then like a few of like another color. So that way it's just like almost everybody's playing like in one color, but you're like splashing for
Like
occasional
the
other
Fire
color for those
Swamp,
other pawns.
or like
Yeah.
there's a couple of them that do that, and I think that's really cool. I just don't happen to
neat
have
for the
one of the. I don't
environment,
have one
but
of those cubes.
because
Now,
they're
I've got-
actually trying to like portray something. They're
Even
trying
the-
to demonstrate something mechanically, but for people just trying to make a like relatively standard cube environment, it makes sense to have a certain amount of like balance, right? It makes a certain amount of sense to have like roughly around the same amount of cards. Like they don't have to be perfectly even, just enough that it's just like it's not going to be noticeable, or enough that it's going to look nice in cube cover.
See, you just hit the nail on the head.
Spreadsheet
It's you
aesthetics,
guys
baby.
looking at your cubes on Cube Cobra, thinking, "Look at those numbers; they all match so prettily."
Even when I type it up in Excel, I had it sorted in columns. I want to know. I'm just an organized person, sort of, kind of. Although if you saw my office with my magic cards, you wouldn't believe anything I just said. Total chaos.
Look, Anthony's sitting in my office right now. I've got boxes with clothing hangers. I've got bedding. I've got a laptop on the floor. I've got swimwear in it. Yeah, you don't even want it. Look, don't even open my closet.
6 unopened boxes. Modern Horizons.
They'll be
2,
coming. They'll be
Cons of
coming to
Tokyo
have it.
Mirror.
I do. Modern Horizons 2, Core 2021.
This is really sad to look at.
It's great to look at. It's
You're
glorious.
just staring at boxes.
All right. So let's move on. But I love that. That was a great conversation. Next one. An absolutely outrageous disrespect for pips. And I'm going to give a shout out to, again, this is something we've talked about, our good friend JP, Justin Parnell. He's not a fan of pips on pips on pips. He likes like a pip and a couple of, colorless pips in there. I am a big pip guy. I want to see more colors. I want to see complicated casting costs. I think that colorless mana is just way too easy for people to get away with value. Just cast whatever. I want to see more pips in Cube. May, too little, too much, just right.
Okay, so see, I like pips for game design purposes. When we're like talking about some of the blights of cube design, right? Some of the things that we try to avoid, and this isn't everybody, obviously, but like 5-color good stuff is like a big nemesis to a lot of cube curators. Not everybody, obviously, but for a lot of people, just having the good stuff piles. And a lot of the ways that people try to address that is, well, how good are your aggressive packages? How good you're fixing, etc. But the other aspect of that is, how does your pips actually look? Do your good cards, are they pip intensive? Because having strong like bomb cards that come down and like impact the game, but actually have a cost for your deck. Like, for example, Benalish Marshal, I think it is, where it's the triple white pip.
Yes.
That's a strong card.
Great card.
Great card.
Difficult
but
to
you're
cast.
Stuck in mono white. You are dedicated to mono white at
Yes.
that point. Like, at worst, you're splashing for like maybe a color, right? But you get power at a cost. And that is a cool design that we can have access to as a curator. It's a good lever for us to have access to. However, I think that there's a lot of cube curators that don't really think about that. And I don't mean that to be insulting. I hope that's not how it's coming across.
I am super insulted right now.
It's a lever that I don't think is properly utilized. And as much as players are going to groan and complain every time that they see like good cards blocked behind like expensive pips or whatever, as a game designer or as a cube curator, we can understand that they have a particular role that actually affects like the environment of the cube. Of, hey, this is a thing that really only exists with these things. It's a big reason why I love like a lot of the Shadowmoor Eventides hybrid cards. They were very pip intensive,
yeah,
but they existed within 2 colors, right?
Anthony?
I just realized something. So our bias of the questions is already kind of like preordained. We already have our feelings, right? So when he asks, do we think there's too much, too little, or not enough pips? Well, he also said one of the things is based on your experiences of playing cubes.
Yes.
So I only play cubes that don't have too much pips. So ergo, because I actually want to play Magic, and I don't want to just pass around cards the whole time.
Well, Anthony, is that a consideration for you when you're designing a cube? Do you even, like, you're looking at the pips from a color balancing perspective? You're looking at the pips potentially from a mana fixing perspective?
Also, sorry to interject, but to clarify, I'm saying that there's not enough because not enough people like utilize the lever because most people are looking for the easy draft type cards of, oh, this is easy to draft. People are more likely to pick it. It's more competitive. Right?
So I solved the robust problem with pips in the Monopoly. It's my desert cube where I'm intentionally actually encouraging people to either spend their treasures or weaponize their treasures. That's the whole gist of the cube, right? Either use it to advance forward or use the treasures to kill your opponent. And because I've made treasures, I have now opened up this whole idea of, well, pips don't matter as much. They don't. For that matter, green doesn't matter, ramp doesn't matter because the treasures will do it for you, right? So I don't have to focus on these type of typical design philosophies that I would use in most of my cubes, right? The rampant growths and all that aren't relevant. It's a whole different playing field. So yeah, if I got a 5-color card in there that does something, sure, that's cool as heck, man. As a matter of fact, I'm running that Cascade card or whatever it is. It costs like 5, and the first spell you cast has Cascade. That's like my free parking space, right? I forced myself outside of my comfort zone. I built that. But if you look at my other cubes, like I try not to exceed 2. And when I'm drafting in particular, I really don't draft double pip anything except outside of a card that's irreplaceable, like a Wrath of God or a Damnation, something that feels, or a counterspell. If that's what they have, right? Something that doesn't feel like it can be replaced in this cube, and that's me knowing the meta of the cube. Otherwise, that's why I said Arcane Denial earlier in your counter magic question. It cost me one colorless, one blue. Yes, it gives them a card, hyper efficient. Or a singular pip card, like a Pyroblast or something like that, is a card. Or Inquisition, or I can keep going, right? Doesn't matter. I try to avoid pips like the plague. I'm an interactive player. I like to be a little aggressive in my playing style, I guess, and get down the field. Not a creature aggressive, but I like to be disruption aggressive. I don't do pips.
I love that it's interesting to me. May, you came at this more from the curation perspective, but Anthony, you came at this more from the player perspective, right? Whereas, and this is usually a pivot from where we usually land, right? I'm usually talking more from the playing and drafting perspective, and you're talking a little bit more from the curation perspective. But the question, and honestly, the questions are all very open. So I want it to be feedback and opinion, regardless of the perspective that you're coming from. But to me, I'm interested to know, just from a curation perspective, do you think that the space out there, right, and maybe you've seen too little, too much, not just enough, whatever, that maybe there's a pressure that's available to curators to put on their players, and maybe that involves powering down the cube a little bit, could even be powering up the cube a little bit, where you're putting the pressure on the players with the pips to ensure, again, that maybe the good stuff isn't quite as available, or maybe, and I want to say pigeonholing the drafters, because I don't like that you're forcing or pushing your drafters too much in a direction, but just maybe engineering the choices a little bit.
If you give me the mana, I'll do it. If you don't give me the mana,
then you won't do it.
I'm not going to do it.
Simple.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. All right. So I'm a pip enjoyer. Anthony's not a pip enjoyer. May, sounds like you're a pip enjoyer, but in the right
I
space.
enjoy the game design of pips.
I am Big Pippin.
Big Pippin.
Did like it in the aspect of, I'm trying to build a certain thing. Dang it, I can't build this thing because I want my options open.
Yeah.
Like I understand that it's a gripe, but I also think it's kind of a necessary evil.
I agree. I think it's necessary. Make pips great again. All right, we're moving on.
Too much.
Next one. Again, this actually came up quite a bit when we were talking about my Diablo cube and the design. Man, I'm going to start with you. Sorcery speed removal. And probably creature removal is going to be the heaviest part of this subject, but just sorcery speed removal in general. Obviously, this isn't including things like mass removal, Armageddon, Damnation, Wrath of God type of effects. The 4 mana destroy every creature is obviously, at sorcery speed. Really talking about the more targeted removal spells for things like creatures. Too much, too little, just right.
A big problem with sorceries at the moment is that they're kind of losing their identity at the moment, because their whole shtick is that they were supposed to be able to have more options. They were supposed to be a little bit, stronger. They were supposed to have a little bit something more than their instant speed counterparts, either more efficient or giving you a little bit of extra gravy or some kind of additional thing. But it also acts as an additional lever for when...
Let me interrupt you. No, carry on. I couldn't help it. There was an interrupt joke there. Sorry.
Anthony, you're fired. But that was fantastic. Well done.
But I feel like that when it comes to, like, especially in low power environments, it is an important floor to consider of when you are trying to play around with what your creatures are doing. What are they doing before they die at sorcery speed? If they die at sorcery speed, what are they dying to? Et cetera, et cetera. For example, it's the classic Vindicate test that a lot of people are familiar with, like, especially within our community, right? It's not quite as the dies to removal thing, like a lot of people tend to blow way out of proportion and completely miss the point. The point of it is, what does your thing do before it, like, disappears, gets interacted with, etc. But that's kind of changed a lot more as we've gotten more instant speed interaction. And I don't think it's the issue that it's never going to be an issue that there's too much sorcery speed interaction in the aspect that it is bad for the opponent. It is bad for the players because they're never going to feel enticed when it's just like, okay, but why would I pick this over a Doomblade? Why would I pick this over a Murder? Why would I pick this over any other instant speed option?
Maybe because it's cheaper.
Right.
And I think that's a distinction.
That's the point.
Like Fell.
Right.
Yeah, right. But that's the point, is that it lets us add a lever. And anytime that we can have that additional lever as like a curator, I'm going to be pretty happy about it. But I think that it's too little, just on the whole, where I, don't see a lot of sorcery speed interaction because most people are just looking for the instant speed stuff. They're looking for people to do things on the stack. They're looking for, like, even in the creature dense environments where it's just like, I'm trying not to have like a bunch of removal in my environments. They just reduce how much like removal that they have rather than increasing like how many sorcery speed options they have.
You got to get out of my head. I was going to say all of this. Literally, you got to stop. I'm going to stop you right now. No more. You literally said all my thoughts. I can't even. I got nothing now.
Okay, go ahead. My point was that I think too little. But
yeah, okay, well, too little. Because she said literally, like the last 60 seconds have been like, I've been sitting there queuing up. Like, this is what I'm going to say. I made my interrupt joke. And then May, well, you already said it. It's too late. Literally, what May said is how I feel. I think it's too little, and I'm okay with it because I want everything not to suffer from summoning sickness, and I want the stack to happen. Those are the interesting games. That's just where I'm at, like in my pacing in my current Magic journey. I want to feel smart, feel like I got timing down. Before the end of your turn, I'd like to do this, right? Sorcery speed does come at a cost. I think it's a perfect lever for controlling the tempo of a game, as in the sense of mana usage and resources. That's what sorcery serves as, the same as your creatures. It comes at a cost. It's a very important cog, as she mentioned. And she's right. People switch over to, I don't want to deal with that. We'll call it quote-unquote resource denial or expenditure of your resources in order to promote your board state. I was just watching the Queen of Chess about the Polish young lady, and that's a lot of that aggression whenever they were doing the what was that style of play where they came out? I can't think of it. There's one named after a British defense, and then there's the Sicilian defense. And they're talking about how they kind of maneuver and get in fast, lightning fast, and try to attack. All the other players were kind of resting up. They took all their time, they spent their resources, they positioned their pieces.
There's a famous quote that I think applies.
Whereas these other people in particular were very aggressive getting in there, not from a creature standpoint, but maneuvering and unsettling the opponent.
Everybody thinks they have a plan until they're getting punched in the face.
Yeah, that's actually true.
Mike Tyson said that, and it's so true.
But how did he say it? Can you do the voice?
No. I like Mike Tyson.
What about when you get their ear bit?
No, no. Anyway,
I have a perfect example. Think Lightning strike. Thank you. For some reason, my brain was completely.
That's okay.
absent
My
from
brain
that.
was thinking about Mike Tyson doing it in the air of the night.
Van der Holyfield and-
But the point is that lightning strike, right? It's instant speed. It has a lot of flexibility. You can hit your opponent's face, and then you get incendiary flow. Does the same things, except it can exile. When it kills something, it's exiled. It's gone forever. But it's at sorcery speed. And that's a cool lever. Because it's just like, you're not getting a worse card per se in your environment. You're just getting a certain advantage for being slower.
Is it
right?
enough?
It is if they're capitalized off the graveyard, like if they got like an unearth or something type effect in there.
My point isn't that if you see them both in a pack, you're going to pick the incendiary flow. My point is that if you have like a lightning strike and you're wanting to slow it down, you have access to incendiary flow so that we don't feel like that you're having to reduce your card quality.
We're gonna wrap these up. You already had all of this covered by May, so we're gonna wrap up this subject.
Thank you, May.
May. So let's just quickly round the table. Too little, too much, or just right. Sorcery speed removal.
Too little.
Too little. You should do 25-75.
Too little, and Wizards, you've got a huge amount of design space for more sorcery speed removal. Not even just with no downside, maybe even with upside. I'm just saying it.
Sorcery speed with upside is
sorcery speed
very
with upside.
good avenue. I'm
telling you, I think
make a treasure so I can use all these stupid pips you made me draft.
All right, here we go. Next one. An abundance of game pieces that make the games long, overly complicated, and just quite frankly, a pain in the ass for the players. Anthony, I'm starting with you.
I'm going to go first because I get to pick on Sandwich for this one. Because literally he's doing a game philosophy of saturating the board with more external game pieces. We don't know how that's going to play out yet because that is, according to him, a peasant community movement is to put more things on the field, to do more things with it, to create more choices. I don't know yet. Like, more choices in a game that's already complex and saturated, and armies trying to climb over the other army. I played football, and I remember I was a left guard and a right tackle, and I remember slamming head on into a person, oftentimes bigger than me, trying to get underneath their shoulder pads so I could lift them up to make the shoulder pads make contact with their face mask before a referee saw me so I could blind them because it got me in pure height and strength. So I'm just going to take out their ability to even see, so they're forced to look up, and then maybe I can topple them. I don't want to play Magic that way. I didn't like playing football that way. I want the games to feel like they're organic and they're flowing and there's interactions and they're stack. And, sometimes you lose, sometimes you win, and I'm okay with that. But what I don't want to see is this giant, Revolutionary War. Everybody's got their muskets pointing at each other.
You don't want Magic to become Warhammer, is what you're saying.
That sounds miserable. So yeah.
Too much
Too much game loss.
May, where you at?
But I don't want to win Voltron either, so I will know.
I'm going to have a little bit of a humbling moment. I am 100% guilty of enjoying the external game pieces and the things that complicate the game.
You do.
Especially with things like dungeons, right? I like dungeons. However, I am also I've always been in the boat that if you're going to be introducing that as a concept, you should be all in on that, right? So, for example, I consider adventures a relatively complex mechanic. It's that is a mechanic that if people haven't played with adventure cards before, that is something that you just have to explain, but you only have to explain it once. But it adds an additional mode into the game where it's I have all these extra cards over here that I can still cast. It's still an extra zone that players have to think about. However, that's the main thing in the Fake Cube. You have Typal and you have Adventure. Those are the two big things of the Fake Cube. And let's be clear, dungeons are never ever happening in the Fake Cube. But I've had a lot of dungeon cubes. I've done a lot of things with complex mechanics because I like those cards. I think they're fun. I think they're interesting. I like things that let me interact with the little external game pieces and let me play the game in a slightly different way. However, I've also played with a lot of people.
I think it's important that we clarify this question, though, because this question seems like we just went two different paths. I went creatures, rams, hitting horns. You went with more pieces. I initially started with more pieces. Please clarify your question.
Yeah, more game pieces and more, and I think Maze kind of hit it on the head. More, it's not just more creatures.
And I'm
right?
sorry for interrupting, but I was
more,
so lost on his question.
More types is correct, right? And May, you hit it on the head, right? Because now you're looking at plot and adventure and dungeons and initiative and monarch and your lands and your creatures and your enchantments and your planeswalkers and your artifacts. And all of a sudden, you've got 10 potentially different types of things that are on your playmat that you have to keep track of. And not only that, but your opponent has to keep track of as well.
I want to erase the board. I'm just going to erase the board. I love Sandwich's Exile Files. It is that and Dragons of Winter's Night are my, I actually posted this today to Chris. Those are my S tier cubes. Like Dragons of Winter's Night and the Exile Files are 2 cubes that I probably could just play absolutely ad nauseum. And the Exile Files in particular is doing exactly what May is talking about. Saturating the board with all these different zones and tracking of adventure and tracking of exile and all these things. Now go to the Peasant Cube and we're going to add more pieces for the sake of adding more pieces. So I've got more levers I can pull, treasures, clues, food, all that. I got different feelings about that. I understand why you don't want... I get the logic of Chris wanting to put more pieces because he doesn't want games to feel samey. That's ultimately what he wants to do. He wants to give you...
variants.
He's
They're
opening
fun.
up avenues.
Is that what? So is that your line of thinking there, May? Because you mentioned that you like the dungeons and you like all of that. And is that kind of where you're at with those additional game pieces, is that it does add variance? Because let's face it, adventure cards do something and then you've got something else that you can do as well.
Over time, I've had to realize that that's a personal taste, and people only have a certain threshold of patience when it comes to playing their Magic games. People are more invested when they have decks that they can understand, that they can feel like that they are like drafting and
in
understanding what they're building. Yeah, that they're in a lot more control of, right? And like dungeons are like a whole extra external piece, and this is like the extreme example of this. And this is like a whole additional avenue that you have to think about when you're assessing your cards, and it makes it very, very difficult for like a player that's just barely picking up your cube. They have a certain threshold of patience in order to stay engaged with your environment. And over time, I've realized that that threshold of patience is much, much lower than I expected. And part of that is like local play group. Another part of that is just like the amount of people that I played with that like aren't as experienced as Magic as I am. But I think it's too much. It's happening too much. It's had too many spaces, and it ends up in spaces that sometimes it just doesn't need to be. Which is why I led with the Fake Cube example, where it's just like, if you're going to do the thing, make that your one thing, so that we just only have to explain it once.
I'm going to say that mine is kind of a growth process, right? Like I've got certain types of cubes that, so the emblem cubes have become very prolific, and people like doing the clown shoes cubes or whatever. They're getting inventive, which I do appreciate. I'm just way outside of my comfort zone because there's an era of Anthony that does want to actually win and not feel stupid or miscalculate a play or something like that. So take Anthony Maddox's Turbo Cube, which people absolutely love it. I've put it on my list to play, and then I took it out. And I put it on my list to play, and I took it out. And because I'm too nervous to take on something like where I've got to reduce everything by 2. Because I can't do the mental math. It doesn't come easy to me. I literally do math for a living. But when I'm nervous and I'm sitting across from a player that may or may not be a better Magic player than me, I don't know. I'll find out very soon. And I got to do this, not try to miscalculate everything while doing it. Intimidates me as a human being. The Ball Pit was a highly successful cube at the last CubeCon. People absolutely adored it. Our good friend Shoot walked up and said he had a wonderful time. And by the time it was over, I was so scared to even sign up for this thing because of the flipping over the cards in order to make a chromatic spear or whatever. I just can't do that. But when the CubeCon was wrapping up and they told me how much fun they had in this environment, and then I listened more about the developer, the designer that made this cube, and I'm like, man, damn, I wish I'd played this cube. Like, so you said it right. That's a personal taste. So for me, adding more pieces to the board can be intimidating, which is wild to me when I'm totally into this cube that Chris just built because I didn't have a choice. We're all playing it, right? Either I play it or I just go home, right? I'm the jerk that makes 7 players. So I played the Exile Files. And I'm like, wow, maybe there is something here. Maybe I should try the ball pit. Maybe I should try the turbo cube. Maybe I shouldn't. I should get over this my pre-existing condition I have of fear of playing external game pieces or modified rules or cascading into something. These cubes are fascinating. I've just chosen to avoid them because I'm not comfortable.
And okay, so you're saying, what are you saying? Too much?
I'm saying too much until I'm ready. It's like you're trying to teach me how to swim, but you kicked me in my back and I fell in the pool full of Jello.
Okay, so I will
you would have asked me the same question like a year ago, I would have said too little, but nowadays I say too much.
Okay, so I'm going to say this. When my cube, I originally was looking at all the elements of the thematic style gameplay that I wanted to promote and just ended up just with a theme rather than the gameplay. And I will say that, not that my cube is not as dynamic as I would like, but I think I would like more to it. And it's one of the reasons, Anthony, you and I talked about this the other day, and I said, I would kind of like to rebuild this cube. I'm going to keep the current iteration as it is, but I want to develop a new version that does actually have some more complexity to it, because I feel like...
you won't let Chris and I help you, and if you did, we could probably...
Who said I wouldn't?
You need to open it up to us and let us kind of
let's do it.
Then we can do it.
We'll do it as a... We can do it as a group project.
You did the first one as your own little personal pride project, and you built this thing, right? And it was your baby, just like you did with the. So
I've never been averse to help.
But now let us just get in there and dig into that thing.
But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start putting. Here's all the things I do want dungeons in the cube. Okay, for an RPG dungeon crawler, it just seems absolutely asinine not to include them. So I'm going to say
White Plume Adventurer should have like an emblem.
White Plume Adventurer is not in there. It's just way too powerful. Let's just put that out there. But there's other dungeons that I think I need to be exploratory. There's so much space there. I'm going to say just right, because there's people that are adventurous in that space. This is the last 2 questions. Okay, May, I'm going to start with you. Alternative rules / mechanics / starting things in the cube. So this can be anything from I'm sharpening one of the cards or a bunch of the cards to everybody starts with a chromatic lantern or whatever the case may be.
I think I might have ruined your question, so you might as well just focus on May, because I've already answered. That was my last tirade.
That's fine.
So my previous points were about like card mechanics.
Yes.
Let's be clear. Like when it comes to like game complexity, card complexity, whatever, I still hold a lot of those opinions, right? However, once you start getting into I am basically making a sub game with magic cards, you have my attention. Only for the moment, but you have it, right? But there is a very, very thin line that you are treading between this is like something that is interesting and engaging that you are doing that's actually like unique for using magic cards. Think of the Prohibition Cube. Like, that's just an absurdist concept, and that's just like surface level of absurdism type cube stuff, where it's just like blue cards are banned, and instead of lessening learn cards, you just have things that let you grab blue cards, right? And
that was a shtick. That was a shtick. They're playing off of literally the 1920s, 1930s Prohibition era.
Let me finish. It is a shtick. It is a shtick, right? That's like surface level things, and it's just enough to just like gets people interested and engaged. Then you have extreme things like Big Spender, or Descend into Avernus Cube, or in my case, like Shadow Game, right? Where I'm sharpening a bunch of cards to have Morph and Manifest, where it's like I am actively changing the way that these cards function. However, the extent in which the gameplay changes drastically varies, right? Like, I'm still in the boat that my Shadow Game cube is still effectively magic. These are still just magic cards. They're still using magic rules. It's just I'm using magic cards to say, instead of just the regular vanilla card, it now has Morph. This now manifests when it ETBs. It's still magic. It's just the cards now do different things. It still kind of exists in that kind of surface level space. But then you go into Big Spender, where it's just like the draft is different.
Very
the gameplay
different.
is different.
Everything is different. Everything is different.
people do really creative things with it, and I love it. And that is the type of thing that can only be explored in Cube, and I think that it is just right.
And nice. I won't touch it with a 10-foot pole. I remember you sat down, you're like, here's my pennies, here's my nickels, here's my dimes. I'm like, I have got to go check to see if everybody's having fun.
I loved it. It was so much fun.
And you guys had a great time?
It was great fun.
I just don't have the mental load. I have been thinking about this a lot. So before I say what I say next, this is Anthony internalizing and then expressing his own feelings. I think we use the term game design entirely too much. As in, that would be kind of...
Oh, hot take.
Yeah, that would be kind of like the person who played Donkey Kong, went for the world record, and then took the board and got accused of modifying the board so that they could win Donkey Kong. What I mean by that is we are taking a game that Wizards of the Coast people have designed, such as, say, our good friend Gavin Verhey, etc., and they have taken the time to design these cards. And then I like to say I curate, because I have sampled from their pieces. I'm not going to modify the rule set of their game. I'm just going to make a draft set based on this. I'm going to the library. I'm checking out books. As Usman said, I've got a recipe, and I need me some tamarind, and I need me some sage, and I need some carrots, and I need some potatoes, and I need my protein. I'm picking these pieces, and then I make you a soup. And that's what I've done. I've curated you a soup. I haven't designed you a soup. I read the recipe. I follow a little bit of a prescriptive stance on that. But then over time, I tweaked the soup because you said it wasn't to your taste. As, again, quote Usman, little salt, little pepper, maybe too much, too little, back to the Goldilocks type thing we're talking about. But I made a choice. And I tune it. And I listen to people, and I add, and I remove. And new cards come in, and I insert, and I try. But I don't drastically change. I just kind of keep modifying. So I'm curating.
So you're a traditionalist.
I'm a very. This is my personality. I'm not a game designer.
You're not a game designer
because I haven't done anything new. I haven't broken outside the shell.
You just want to use the Magic cards as they were printed,
as Dr. Richard Garfield intended, and then add a little salt, little pepper, little paprika, and that's what I do. Now take Andy Mangold, good friend of ours, and makes 100 ornithopters and introduce something fascinating to the cube design world. That's not how my brain functions. I love this cube. Again, though I can't replicate that idea, it's reinventing making a new recipe, right? I can make a chicken fricassee, but you tell me, Anthony, go make something on his own with a chicken, it's probably going to taste like 1,000 different ways you've made a chicken. I don't have that ability to reinvent the wheel. Right? So I curate the wheel. I take care of it, but I don't redesign it. Whereas you make Shadow Game, you're a game designer. Your brain is much more adept at the idea of going outside the box. So you color outside the lines. I color outside the lines in other things, not in Magic. I do it in my profession. I'm the weirdo in my profession that thinks of weird zigzag things, but not in my hobby.
I think I have a good example for you. So I have a little story for you about a game called TF2. So as some of you might know, this was a game that originally started off of Team Fortress, which started off as, mods off of like a Doom engine, or not Doom engine, Quake engine. So the whole point of that was that it was a whole evolutionary process where we took a game like Quake, and we have people like you, where you would consider yourself, let's say, a modder, where it's like you don't really change much of Quake. You switch around some level, you create your own levels, you like reuse some of the textures, you like reuse some of the enemies, etc., and then you like redesign how like a level is going to go, and then you re-put it into a little area for you to explore,
into a new gameplay experience.
Yeah. But it's still Quake, right? And then there are people who were like, I'm going to try to make Quake something else. And then turning that into Team Fortress, into eventually Team Fortress 2, right? They turned that thing into an engine, into something else.
Do you think it'd be better served if they called us platformers instead? Because we're working on a platform. I mean, it's what we're doing. We're platformers. We're not curators. We're not designers. We're platformers.
But
I don't think that's a very
some of the
term.
All-time great experiences, and even video games, if we're going to go down that route,
Chicken
have
Horse.
come from people who have taken existing engines, mechanics, and created something completely new from them. Like Counter-Strike, you know me, I'm a big Counter-Strike fan. That's all from Half-Life.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right? So you think about where the creativity of people has come from, and it's incredible what we have nowadays just from the creativity of people who've said, you know what, I am going to take the fundamentals.
Came from like StarCraft.
Yeah, take some
Wild.
Look at Warcraft 3 and what is now League of Legends and Dota and stuff like that, right? There's so much creativity that's
when I made
there.
my platformer comment, what I meant by that is you're selecting from game pieces, you're putting on it changes the field of play, it changes how the game happens, but you're still working within the same platform.
It's more like a modder.
You're a modder. Right. That's what you do.
Yeah. You're creating modified content.
You're not designing no more than I take a school bus in a video game and I turn it upside down and call it a boat because it's on water.
But now you've made a boat.
Right.
And maybe that game needed a boat.
Now let's bring it back to the Magic conversation. When I do tend to agree that I feel like that people tend to overuse the overlap between game design and cube curation a little bit too much. Because there is a big difference between when people are designing a game experience with their cube environments as opposed to just reusing game design that already exists, right? For example, my Fake Cube, that is not a display of my game design prowess. That is a display of my curation prowess, my understanding of magic sets, like my understanding of limited environments, etc., right? That shows off a different set of skills than Big Spender, right? Big Spender is showing I am using these cards in order to create a gameplay experience. This is just the best platform to do it because these cards are familiar. These cards are accessible. And when people are already in the Magic space and already, willing to try these new things, like even last time we went to CubeCon, I had a game unrelated to Cube stuff that was completely workshopped of just, hey, what if we just played Magic Uno, where we just played Uno with Magic cards, and it was a blast. It was a great time. I think that it is an important distinction to make, but there is a certain degree of recognizing that you can employ game design elements and philosophies into your creation and into your cube design, especially when you're getting into those creative spaces, less when you're getting into the artistic curation part of it. And it's not to take away. This isn't diminishing of like Wizards of the Coast work. It's not diminishing of any of their cards.
Get out of my head, May. I was going to say that as an interjection.
The point is not to diminish them. The point is that they have designed these game pieces, and we want to utilize those game pieces in new lenses. We want to see what they can do in other contexts. In the same way that the Quake slowly became the Quake engine. And it's not to say that one day we're going to make the new next Magic. That's obviously not the implication. The implication is we're doing fun and interesting things.
You're right. Yeah.
So people like fun and interesting things can be done.
All right, as always, a huge shout out to all of our Patreons. Much love to all of you guys for helping keeping the lights on here at Ubercubes. Jeff Stumpo, David, Richard, Wilsey, Chris Fitzgerald, Timber Dragon, Brian Christensen, Keaton Schultz, Lord Justice, Preston, and Sam McKenna. Again, big thank you to all of you guys. Much love. As always, if you want to get in on the conversation, head over to the Facebook.com/groups/MTGcube. What are we looking at right now?
We have well exceeded. We're encroaching 1,400, and this week alone, we've had a ton of people come in.
A lot of people.
And I've noticed that when I post stuff about Power Vintage Cube, and this will make people chuckle, they talk a lot more. How do we fix that?
More thematic.
Yeah.
More horror cube, more femme, more fair.
I've tried. They'll get
in there.
I'll get like 3 comments versus 100 comments.
All right. Well, we'll do what we can to diversify the conversation. How about that? As always, you can find us on the socials: Twitter at UbercubeMTGPod, Bluesky, UbercubeMTGPodcast.bsky.social. If you want to reach out to us, got a longer comment or question about this episode or anything else, at Ubercube. You can reach us at ubercubemtgpodcast@gmail.com. As always, a big thanks to our Patrons, patreon.com/ubercube. Come hang out on the Discord. We got more people. All right. Well, again, thank you to everyone. Thank you to our Patreons. A big shout out and a big thanks to May and Anthony from me, because this was kind of sprung upon them for this episode. And I love you guys. It was good times. It was good times. All right. We're going to do what we do at the end of all of our episodes. And we're going to say...
Happy Q.
Something happens and I'm head over heels. I never...
The whole thing was butchered.